Whenever you're ready, Uncle.
Okay, my name is Kaush here in Tlingit country, in my mother's country of Masset. In Haida country is my name is Iljawas. My mother and father was Thomas L. Jackson Sr. My mother was Mona Jackson. And I had 10 siblings, and there's 4 of us left. And thinking about it, I might have to redo this mother of cake tree because I did a print on it. It was my tradition back in the day when I was going to college because we wanted something to give to my siblings and friends, and I did a limited edition of silkscreen prints of our culture. And some of them were very large, like the killer whale dancer for my father in his clan, the Tagwedi, where it has the seal and the killer whale, where a man is in full regalia of the killer whale and dancing. And one of the stories he told me, along with his dad and his grandfather, his dad was Scotty Jackson, his grandfather was Kujish Johnny C. Jackson. We were outside his house working on some traps in the fall time, getting ready for winter trapping, where they used to run hundreds of traps for mink and otter, wolves, and they disappear for 2.5 months in the winter. But I was asking about, I was born here in Cake, one of the last generation before they start sending them to Petersburg or Manishkum. But my age group were all born here. And I asked them, well, my younger brothers were all born either in Petersburg or Sitka. How did Mom them have us here? And she said, my father said, we had, you were born at home. But he said, you bring up a pretty good subject. And we're looking right behind Scotty Jackson's house, my grandfather's house. And he said, see that house right there? That's Calvin Wilson Sr.'s house. He said, right behind it used to be the mother of cake tree. And I go, mother of cake tree? And Grandpa Johnny, great Grandpa Johnny, start talking in Tlingit. He started chuckling. My dad said, he's saying you should have been born under there. You ask so much questions like the old people. And I was about a teenager, and I wasn't that young. But I said, what do you mean they were born under there? And he said, you remember going out camping with me and pulling up big halibut and we were selling them? I said, yeah. And he said, every place we camped, we were camping under a big spruce tree. It's nice and dry, huh? And I said, yep. But I said, still, mother of cake tree. And Dad said, yeah. Back in the day, when we lived in our tribal houses, he said, they kept everything, the mothers and grandmothers kept the place very clean in the house, to the point of where when a woman had her menstrual cycle, they would go out of the house and live under that mother of cake tree. And he said, even to the point of when, he said, I was born there. He said, Dad was born there, Grandpa was born there, and they started chuckling. And because they said it was a sacred site, a sacred place, we never played around it, just the women and the girls. And when the girl had her first menstrual cycle, that's where they took her to start teaching her things about life, about living within their community, about being a clan mother, to get them ready for their responsibility of carrying their culture, their language, and caring for the children. And I said, and you guys were born under there? And he said, yeah, right up to the point where Uncle Shawan, one of the younger ones, was born there. And I said, yeah, I could see that. No one talked about it. And he said, yeah, everybody in the town went there to have their children. My thought, because as I grew older and went on to college at Oregon State University for forestry, that's what we were studying, was the spruce tree, and how in an open area, and they kept that place open. It was like, he said, it was like a big lawn, but that was the only tree there that grew. And when you grow a spruce tree in the open, it has branches all the way down to the ground. And they said they kept it like that and created just an entrance and had underneath it, where it rained like crazy, snowed and blew, and just putting up a few yellow cedar bark hanging from the tree up above them. They would keep warm. They didn't dare start a fire in there. They had lamps of stone and seal oil for light. And what we learned in forestry school was that underneath those kind of trees, it was very like a desert underneath there. And here in Alaska, the roots are twice the diameter of the widest branches on the tree, because the roots don't have to go down into the ground. They just go along the ground, and they have to stabilize them in the wind. Down south, it's so dry that the taproot goes down into the ground deep to get water. Here, we're in a rainforest, and all the roots just grow right underneath the moss. And it started making sense to me as I start working in the field, but I always thought when I got home and thinking about a print to do, I thought of the mother cake tree. And I think in 1983, around Christmas time, I used to do it right at the dinner table at Mom and Dad's house. And they had that dim, there's still chandelier Mona still has up there. I'd be in there cutting, and everybody would be gathered around watching, and I started a conversation with Mom and Dad about our culture, whether it was the mother of cake tree for other people to listen, or they wanted me to explain it when I got done. But I envisioned it as I just start really observing my wife Edna, because she did a lot of weaving, and we always did silk screens for our bread and butter when we come home from summer. I do t-shirts back in the late 70s and then through the 80s to get back to school. I'd sell them locally. People thought they were pretty cool because they were native designs. And that afforded us to come home and go back to school down in Oregon. So at one Christmas time, I was making up this design, and I told the story back to Mom and Dad about the mother of cake tree, where it was a sacred place for all the children to be born that were of Kikwan. And I started cutting it out and explaining it to them. I kind of just drew a real quick sketch what it might look like, so I could put it underneath the plastic to cut out the silkscreen design. They saw me do other ones before, but this one they thought was really unique, and they said, well, how are you going to make the spruce tree? And I said, just the way it looks like to me, like the zigzag lines you see on the design of, and the pattern of the Tlingit design, of the spirit of the tree, the reflection of it on the water when you're going by. And it has that edges on the side in the middle, has the zigzag lines going back. I said, I'm going to modify that design and put our family around it because it's personal. And I ended up doing it. So I'll show you the design. I don't know if you have to move. We just happen to have one here at the OBK office where we're being filmed. Is that at a good angle?
It's a little reflective. Yeah, that's beautiful.
So you see, this is Norman, Jada, Cheryl, Lauren, Della, Larry, me, Gary, Joel, and Myron. The only one that wasn't there was Squirt, Thomas Jackson Jr. He's right here. I split for the spirit that he's looking down on us and looking down at the tree. The mother of Cake Tree is symbolized by this lady here. She's a lady of high standing at the top of the tree. She has a labret on, and she has a beak on her forehead, and could be a raven or eagle. And underneath her is the eagle. It's the yin and yang design of the eagle and a raven. And that's how we're taught to marry the opposite. And under here is the mother, just had her baby. And they're underneath this tree. You could see the needles. I kind of pointed them, had it pointed. So toward the top of the tree, the branches grow up. Toward the bottom, they create that branch going down to the ground. And here's her midwife, the mothers, the grandmothers, the spirit helpers that are there. You notice their eyes are like in prayer, praying for that child and the mother and their family, because back then, the times were hard. They lived under that tree for that time. And the anxious parents, the family would be out here with tea and nice energy food for them. But when they heard the baby cry, I have their hands on their knees. But I remember when we brought our daughter home, and even the children before her were brought home to our mom and dad, they'd put their finger next to the child and the child would go like that, and he said, that's the grip of life. They said they're hanging on by their fingers, and that you have to really watch them and care for them, nurture them to be good, responsible people. So this is what my vision was when they told me that story. It's kind of a short one, but it would be very interesting in our time to plant another one, say on a piece of land that we know might not be built on, and plant a tree to start cultivating it to be a mother of cake tree, symbolically if we want. And I could help out because I have my forestry degree and working on it, but the story of cake will live on, and maybe people will start respecting women more. So that's our story, and thanks to my father, my grandfather, and my great-grandfather, and my mother for telling this story. You have any questions?
Do you remember any details that they shared about how the children would be born underneath the tree, or what the process was that the midwives would use?
Yes. The tribal house, any tribal house, is named after a mother, a grandmother. Every tribal house is a clan house, and the clan leaders of that house are the women. We never had chiefs per se. The women were the ones in that house that appointed the male to speak up when they had to speak up, whether it was for making peace, making war, making an apology, just making a speech. They also cultivated in that house their direct opposite, meaning there was an honored marriage that had a man of good standing. They would groom somebody to be a Nakani for that man in their house, his clan. He'd intimately know all their history. And every one of those houses, when they were dedicated, they put the blood of a slave up in the corners to dedicate it. There's jasper rock around here. That's one of the old power stones. They would bury them at the corner of the house to keep the spirits away, the evil spirits. And the house my father told me about, and also the hot house, the sweats that they created, were always all a symbology of the woman's womb, where we all come from. When they came out of a tribal house, the doors were just about so high. So all adults had to bend over to go out. The men would go out and say a prayer that they're ready to go if the Creator wanted to take them or something happened to them. They were comfortable. They trained their nephews to take their place and watch the family. When the woman went out of the house and bent over and walked out, she said a prayer. Every time she went out, any woman, any girl, when she started her menstrual cycle would say, "Please, Great Spirit, have my child come out this way, like I'm coming out of you." See that? That was the same way as the men in the sweat, in the hot house. They said that prayer when they were in there. They sang their songs for thanking their mother and the Great Spirit and all their ancestors, thanking them for choosing them to come back to help out their clan and their village and to protect the women. So when they crawled out of that sweat, the hot house, they said that prayer again, thanking their mother and all their ancestors, all their relations, for being there to experience again their rebirth, again to reaffirm how they were going to live their life in a good way, respectful way, and respecting everything, and living the life of forgiveness, love, and respect. So I know that's a long answer to a little part of what this is and the meaning of a tribal house.
Beautiful. Kanish chi shawa amo.